Okay, since you're already deeply familiar with Mahāyāna, we are absolutely skipping the 101 stuff today. No rehashing dependent origination or the absolute basics of the two truths. You already know all of that. Instead, we're diving straight into a definitive, paradigm-shifting conclusion to Nāgārjuna's 20 verses on Mahāyāna, the Mahāyānavimśikā. We are looking at the ultimate synthesis of his thought, the middle way, entirely free from all extremes.
Imagine spending decades in meditation, just stripping away the illusions of the world. You're shedding the conventions, quieting the conceptual noise, totally desperate to finally hit the absolute, solid bedrock of reality. And finally, your shovel hits something solid. You hit emptiness. You wipe the sweat off your brow and think, okay, I made it. But then, the shovel dissolves, the dirt dissolves, your hands dissolve, and you realize that the bedrock you thought you hit is actually just another layer of the illusion. It is a terrifying moment for any practitioner when that foundational bedrock is taken away. When you realize that even emptiness is empty, it literally feels like falling.
And that feeling of falling, that is exactly where we're starting today. I want you to hit the pause button on your assumptions for a second. If ultimate reality is literally no emptiness, what happens to your practice? I mean, are we secretly addicted to the medicine of emptiness? We inherently like things to be categorical, to have a final resting place where the mind can just anchor itself. But today, we're going to challenge that habitual reification.
To do that, we have to dismantle what I like to call the old conclusion. This is a flawed, honestly extremist view that urges the destructive collapse of subject and object, essentially urging us to deconstruct everything into a blank state. But the trap of deconstruction is that collapsing reality into nothingness is just a dualistic extreme. It's a subtle Hinayana trap. By trying to extinguish the mind or collapse reality, you actually create a brand new binary. You're confirming the intrinsic reality of the suffering you're trying to escape by assuming it needs to be actively destroyed.
To break free from this, we have to look at the two truths through the rigorous, logical lockbox of the tetralemma. The conventional truth and the ultimate truth have absolutely zero hierarchy. They are not identical. They are not different. They are not both. And they are not neither. This precise logical framing wipes the board totally clean. You cannot elevate ultimate truth over conventional reality. If you think the conventional world is a dirty illusion and emptiness is the pristine reality, well, you've fallen right back into a dualism.
So this leads to a pretty crucial realization. Ultimate reality is no emptiness. Grabbing onto emptiness as some new life raft actually violates the very principle of dependent origination. Emptiness itself only exists in relation to the phenomena it empties. It is merely a provisional tool, a medicine to cure the disease of grasping. But if you keep taking the medicine after the disease is gone, the medicine becomes a poison. Once the disease of reification is cured, even emptiness must be abandoned. Let's look at how Nāgārjuna anchors this philosophy in verse 2. He uses this vast, beautiful metaphor. He writes, "The Buddha is like the sky, and the beings are like him." Think about it. The sky accommodates absolutely everything. Clouds, thunderstorms, smoke, but it is never altered by any of them. The sky doesn't get wet from the rain. Ultimate reality, much like this sky, accommodates all conventional reflections. Everything is primordially pure, unconditioned, and unceasing, completely free from our obsession with slicing reality into absolutes.
Now you might be thinking, okay, if everything is primordially pure like the sky, why does my life sometimes feel like a living hell? That brings us right to the psychological reality of worldlings captured perfectly by the concept of vikalpa prapancha. This is the conditioned, dualistic, conceptual proliferation. Look, Nāgārjuna isn't denying the subjective experience of pain. The burning sensation of a subjective hell is intensely felt. But he points out that these experiences are entirely generated by false conceptual overlays, by attributing an enduring, intrinsic self, an Atman, to what is fundamentally selfless.
Nāgārjuna uses incredible metaphors to drive this home, like the painter's delusion. Imagine you're a painter. You paint this terrifying demon, a yaksha, using the ink of dependent origination. The painting is so convincing that you forget you're the one holding the brush, and you become physiologically paralyzed by your own creation. Let's stretch this to a modern context. It's Friday afternoon, and you get an email from your boss that says, "We need to talk on Monday." You take the ink of your insecurities and past failures, and you paint a demon where you are fired and completely ruined. By Saturday, your cortisol is spiking. The physiological fear is entirely real, but the demon, it's just your own ink. You've reified an empty, neutral event into an absolute horror.
So what's the solution? Here we see the stark difference between the extremist view and the true Mahāyāna view. The extremist instinct is to extinguish mental function entirely. Burn the canvas, destroy the map. But doing that means you are still acting out of fear. The true Mahāyāna view, the new conclusion we are synthesizing today, you don't burn the studio down. You walk up to the canvas and you touch the dry ink. You transcend the fear without rejecting the painting. You use the valid map of reality, but you never, ever mistake it for the actual territory.
This brings us to verse 17, which honestly usually sets off internal alarms for advanced scholars. Nāgārjuna writes, "All this is nothing but mind, chittam, and exists just like an illusion." Now, hold up a minute. We know Nāgārjuna is not a Yogacara idealist. He does not believe the mind is an intrinsically real substance. So why say nothing but mind? He's using this purely as a provisional pedagogical strategy, a nayartha. It's a philosophical crowbar designed to aggressively pry the practitioner away from their naive realism and their attachment to solid external objects.
And what's truly fascinating here is the epistemological judo move that happens next. According to dependent origination, the perceiving mind and the perceived world are mutually dependent, right? You cannot have a perceiver without a perceived. So once the external objects are exposed as mere mental projections, the projecting subject completely loses its fixed reference point. The subject collapses under its own weight. Both subject and object are transcended together. Once the external objects fall away, you simply drop the crowbar of mind only.
When that dualism is transcended, it changes absolutely everything about how a realized being operates, but it presents a paradox. If a Buddha is completely beyond cause and effect, how can they act as the friend of the world? Doesn't interacting, teaching, or intervening require operating within the conventional laws of cause and effect? I mean, if you are entirely removed from the board, how do you reach into the system to pull someone out of the quicksand?
The answer lies in the total indivisibility of wisdom and compassion. A Buddha does not withdraw into some passive trance. They operate dynamically right on the board. Wisdom, prajna, sees the empty ink on the canvas, while compassion, karuna, tends to the terrified painter in the studio. The bodhisattva's lived reality is acting uninhibitedly to pull others out of the quagmire. They act within cause and effect conventionally, but are ultimately free from it because there is no reification of a doer, an action, or a receiver.
And this right here is the absolute climax of the Bodhisattva path, the union of the two truths in action, UTT in action. It is acting without acting. It's playing the game, knowing completely that it's a game. The wheel of the mind keeps spinning, cognition remains fully operational, but the mind completely stops grasping at its own fabricated maps. You don't retreat from the world. You engage with it flawlessly, without attachment, effort, or absolutes.
To truly live this, however, we have to take the gloves off and deconstruct the final, most stubborn dualism of all, the boundary between the sickness and the cure. In verse 14, Nāgārjuna just drops the hammer. The samsara and nirvana are mere appearances. He applies the exact same ontological status to nirvana as he does to samsara.
This is a massive wake-up call. If you treat nirvana as some kind of metaphysical panic room, a separate ultimate destination you go to in order to escape samsara, you've fallen right back into step one. You have created an in here and an out there. You've painted a really beautiful, peaceful, golden yaksha, but it is still just a painting. It's still a trap. You are still attributing intrinsic existence to a concept.
Let's lock in this definitive new conclusion. Nirvana is emphatically not the cessation of anything. It is the direct realization of the true nature and dynamic of samsara, exactly as it is, right here and now. Everything is already primordially equal, pure, perfect, and divine, in a strictly non-dual sense, free from all extremes. You don't go to nirvana. The conceptual wheel simply stops grasping, and you realize reality is already whole.
We can visualize this entire dynamic with one final metaphor: the Mahāyāna ship. While the extremist's goal is to try and drain the entire ocean to avoid drowning, the middle way is about learning how to sail. You sail the unceasing ocean of appearances. You recognize that the water is completely empty of intrinsic nature, yet you still trim the conventional sails. You still steer the rudder. And you do it with boundless compassion for all the beings thrashing around in the water of false notions. This is the dynamic dance of liberation. The conceptual wheel does not stop. Cognition remains fully operational. The commute, the emails, the conversations, they all continue their luminous display. We simply transcend the dualistic concepts without ever rejecting them.
We use the maps of daily life without ever believing the maps are the physical territory. So I want to leave you with one final thread to pull as you step back into your day. Consider this. If your very next thought, whatever it is, doesn't actually need to be destroyed or emptied out, because it is already primordially pure and perfectly complete in its dependently arisen nature, who is the you that is noticing it? Let that shatter the dualistic observer. Stay suspended in the luminous display of the here and now. Keep touching the ink, my friends. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.